Hey everybody, it's Mitch, and welcome to my next video. Today we have got another Dungeons & Dragons 3.5 video for you. And today we are going to be looking at, how to prepare spells. So let's just get started with it. Alright, so in the game there are, spellcasters, and some casters prepare their spells. Some casters cast them spontaneously. But we're going to be focusing on the ones that prepare their spells. And we're going to be just diving really deep into detail about the mechanics of actually preparing them. Because, some DMs kind of skip over this process, but it actually can be very important. So let's get into it. We're going to start off with our arcane casters. First off, arcane casters are going to require 8 hours of rest. Regardless if their race needs to sleep 8 hours or not. They are still going to need to rest for 8 hours in order to prepare their spells. Once they've had 8 hours to just kind of clear their mind, then they are in a proper space where they can prepare spells. And it's a process that actually takes an hour long. So it will take a full 9 hours to really go through the full process. Of first clearing the mind and then studying and researching and preparing the spells. So during the rest process, if you get interrupted, you add an extra hour onto that because the interruption causes you to have to, go back and reformat your brain, basically, to just re-clear your mind, get that interruption out of there. And on top of that, another thing that's interesting is if you cast any spells during this rest period, when you go to prepare spells, you will not be able to prepare a spell from that slot. That slot, it will basically be used for both the previous day and the upcoming day. So it's really best to try and avoid casting spells during your rest period if possible. So night attacks are particularly nasty for spellcasters since they get double hit on casting. Another thing which is interesting with spell slots is so when you're casting your spells, you need to have an intelligence score of at least 10 plus the spell's level in order to cast it. Now, the trick with that is if the spell's level is higher than, like, say you have access to 9th level spells, but you only have an 18 intelligence. Well, what you can do is you can't cast 9th level spells, but you still have 9th level spell slots. So you can actually just take some 8th level spells and throw them in that 9th level slot and cast them that way. Now that is far from ideal. You definitely want to make sure your intelligence is high enough so you don't ever have to do that. But if it is low enough, that is always an option. And even if your intelligence isn't lower, you can always throw in lower level spells into higher level spell slots. That always works. And when you're casting when you're preparing these spells, you do need to make sure you have access to your spell book. That is very much a requirement for almost all of your spells. There is one exception, and that is the spell Read Magic, which can be prepared even without a spell book. So that's kind of nice. And I think that one has to do with the fact that without Read Magic, it's kind of hard to read the spell book. So, yeah. Another thing is when you're preparing your spell, and sorry, I'm looking down because I'm just kind of referencing the book. I'm actually looking at the Rules Compendium, pages 128 and 129. This is where all the information is. So when you're preparing the spell, lost my train of thought there. So yeah, when you're preparing the spell, what you can do is you can choose to apply meta magic feats to it at that time as well. So you can apply multiple meta magic feats, and that will up the spell level, of course. One thing that was really cool is that I didn't know before is what an arcane spellcaster can do if they want when they're preparing their spells is they can leave some slots open. And then if they get a chance later in the day, they can go and prepare some new spells to fill that in. So an arcane spellcaster technically doesn't have to prepare all their spells at the start of the day. If they think they're going to get some downtime throughout the day that they can cast some more spells, they can save some spell slots, leave them open for that reason, and prepare them the rest later. So that's really cool. Now, of course, you can't use expended spell slots, and any spell slots of if they're spells from the previous day, you can't go in. You can lose them at the start of the day when you're doing this, but later on in the day, you cannot lose those prepared spells. Like, they're locked in place. So yeah, it has to be something that was open when you finished your last one. So yeah, and expended is not open. That's different. So yeah, that's kind of cool. And on top of that, another thing is when you prepare your spells, they're basically stored like mostly cast in your mind, ready to go as soon as you actually cast them. So, there are various effects in the game that can cause you to lose those prepared spells from your mind, and at which point they count as if you had cast them. They become expended spell slots. So that's unfortunate. So that pretty well covers arcane casters. Let's talk about divine, because this is interesting. So divine casters, of course, these are casters that are going to use wisdom instead of intelligence. They're going to function very similarly to arcane casters, but not quite the same. So the whole thing with spell slots is going to work the same, as well as with the recent casting limit. Like if you get cast attacked in the middle of the night, so anything within the last 8 hours, you are not going to be able to reuse those spell slots. They will count as used for both days. So that's unfortunate if that happens. It's best to try and avoid night attacks, or leave that to your non-magical friends if you can. Anyways, so another interesting difference is the way you prepare them. Oh, forgot something with arcane. So arcane ones, when they're preparing them, they actually need to prepare them in a relatively calm, quiet environment. If it's too noisy, too many distractions, even like inclement weather can prevent them from casting their spells. So that's kind of big, actually. Divine casters don't have these same hangups. The main hangup that they have is they don't require rest, which is interesting. Only arcane casters do. But divine casters have to cast their spells at a very particular time of day. And it varies from arcane caster to arcane caster. It depends on whether you're a cleric or you're a druid. It also depends on which deity you worship, or if you worship one. Various different things that you worship and draw your power from are going to require a different time of day. Typically, good clerics will be in the morning, evil clerics in the evening. I'm not sure about druids. I think they're like noon or something. Or maybe maybe sunrise. I'm not sure. Anyways, everyone has their time. You need to look that up for whatever divine class you happen to be in, and see when that is, because it's very, very important that you prepare your spells at that time. If you do not prepare them at that time, you basically just lose the privilege of preparing spells that day. You're just stuck with what you had from left over from the day before, and you're going to have to wait till the next day in order to prepare spells. And this includes, like, if you happen to get attacked at that time and just aren't able to prepare. Now, it does give a little leeway. It doesn't have to be like that exact moment. It does say you can go at the next moment, but if you're prevented from doing it for long and you miss it by a decent margin, you just gotta wait. So if somehow you are prevented, that can be a major problem. So yeah, that's something to keep in mind. But they don't need rest. So if your race doesn't need sleep, well, divine casting has some advantages. Now there's, which is really weird because wizards and elves don't need sleep, but all the elven wizards, which there are many, do need to rest constantly. So yeah, weird. It's a little bit of anti-synergy there. Anyways, let's see. So yeah, that was the whole how they prepare their spells deal. Let's see. Oh yeah, and divine casters, they cannot cast their spells later. Like so, they can't leave like some slots open and like try and cast them later because they have to all be done at that specific time. It does take an hour, just like with arcane casters, but it has to be done during that hour. If you miss it, you miss it. It's just how it is. And so you're going to need to get all your spells done at that time. Meta magic feats work about the same. Prepared spells work basically the same. So yeah, there are some very key differences between arcane and divine spellcasters in how they prepare their spells. So yeah, the difference between a cleric and a wizard is quite profound. And if you really get deep into these are mechanics that don't come up often, but maybe they should, because they do balance out spellcasting a little bit, at least in that if you manage to bombard them enough while they're and interrupt their spellcasting process, that can actually considerably weaken spellcasters. So, just a thought. Anyways, let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. I'm curious what you guys think. If you enjoyed the video, consider giving it a like. Maybe subscribe to the channel for more D&D 3.5 content. Ring that notification bell so you never miss out on a video. Anyways, as always, I'm Mitch. I'll be seeing you.